Hey, what's going on? Welcome along to episode 86 of the Strategy and Conversions podcast. I'm Jamie Davis, and as always, I'm joined by Mr. Mark Tanner.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, Mark, we did the last podcast episode where we looked at the whole kind of scope framework, right? We gave people an insight into that. We looked at operational effectiveness, like I said, the kind of unsexy part of business, but kind of one of the most important parts. And, that was a big podcast episode. Today,
actually.
I think instead of looking at a whole kind of section, we'll just look at, a couple of questions within one of them. And thought it'd be good to start right at the beginning with the S of scope, which is strategic planning. That whole kind of strategy side for me, that's always been my kind of bag. That's why I love to kind of get involved and go, right, okay, what's really going on? What is it we're trying to achieve? And you from the mindset side, with aspirations and achievements, I know exactly the same thing as that you love that part too. So let's get into that there. But yeah, I guess like starting that, I mean, with strategic planning, I mean, we always ask that question on, look, what is your why? Like, what is the reason for you starting the business? What is the reason for you actually, joining in with us doing what we're doing and stuff like that? Because there's always some sort of, not so much a trigger point, but there's always something that's gone on, right? That is forced action.
Well, interesting, because Simon Sinek, he wrote a whole book about this. Start with why, and it is that question, isn't it? Is that we all start something for a reason, and it's understanding that reason why we start. And you could have started something for a particular reason. So you might have a business that's been going, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and you started off with a reason why you wanted to do something, and you might have veered off that. But for people who are starting out, and we can come back to that in a minute, but for people who are starting out a business, is why? Why do you want? And this is a huge question. Why do you want to start a business? What is the reason? What's the purpose? So it kind of is interrelated with your purpose statement. So what is your purpose statement for creating your business? Your reason why? I create this business because I want to bang. And whatever that reason is. But you've got to know, I know you've got to have that purpose. Otherwise your business becomes aimless and goes all over the place. And I think also you need to revisit that reason why quite often, because I know, again, there's people who have been in business for quite a while and have forgotten why they started in the first place. They've gone down different alleys and different routes, and all of a sudden they become uncomfortable. They think, hang on a minute, this is not what I wanted.
That what you just said there about revisiting it, to me, I think that right there is a big problem within the whole kind of why. Now, I think when it comes to, even like you said, that the book, like start with why. I think a lot of people get it confused where they look at the why and they look at the purpose, and it has to be a singular thing within life. What's your life's purpose and stuff like that. And that is quite difficult to kind of work out, right? So, we're always trying to work out why. And before we know it, years have gone past, we still don't know why. Because we're looking at the big thing. But for me, that whole kind of purpose and why is like, it can be chunked. So it's like, what is your reason why? What is your purpose for the next stage? We'll get on to the second question within the strategic planning section about decision making, right? The decision point, right? But for me, it all falls in line with your why, because your why doesn't have to be, okay, in 50 years time, I want this, or in 30 years time, this is what we want. Those dreams, of course we do, right? We want, we look at them being like the kind of BHAGs and stuff like that. We're always working towards it, right? Like shoot for the moon, you might hit the stars kind of thing. That's what we're doing there. But I think so many people get caught up on why, when it's like, look, your why can be for the next year.
And that is so true, isn't it? When some people start a business, they can't think further ahead than a year, because it just seems to be, I don't know, but I want to start a business. And so many people say, I want to start a business and basically create the income that I didn't have because I've been made redundant for a job. The problem with that reason why, it's kind of the wrong way around, because if you, like we've always said, if you try and chase money, it's like trying to trying to catch a squirrel. It'll just you'll never get it. Um, but so creating a reason why is because you want to replace an income is is kind of okay, but you're not going to get people to pay you for your services or your products unless they are of value to that person. So it's got to be a kind of a value proposition in a way. I'm doing this because I want to create fantastic furniture, or I want to create beautiful wood carvings or something, or I want to create practical shelving units or something. I don't know, or I want to coach people on a certain thing. It doesn't matter whether it's service based or product based. But the reason why is why would the other reason why that probably is kind of as an aside to this is why would people come to you to buy whatever you've got?
Mm.
But your reason is why you want to make a difference. And how are you going to do that? And the money, replacing a salary, that kind of will come along behind that reason why. But the main reason why is always about why do you want to do this? Why is it important to you? And how is it going to help the world? Sounds a bit sort of like cosmic thinking, but how's it going to help the world?
Matt, I think exactly that, and I think that there's a few different areas that we get into where it's just like, look, what you offer someone, you're actually solving a problem for that person.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like what you're doing may not change the world, but it may change the world for that one person.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like that's the thing there. But it's like let's flip it on its head a bit. Right, so if we look at your kind of why, I think most people with their why, it turns into money, right? So if you get someone who they're in a job and they want to start their own business, it's usually around kind of money, or if they get into business and they're trying to grow their business and stuff like that, it usually comes back to money, right? And look, money is like, I think that there's a quote from Zig Ziglar, I think, or Jim Rohn, one of them, and they said money isn't important, but it's up there with oxygen.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, it is important. As much as people say, oh, money isn't important, stuff like that. It's like, yeah, it is important, but there has to be more than just the money, because what happens then is that the passion goes, you don't like doing it. We've all had a job where, on the first day we started and stuff like that, we're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and by, a few months later, we're kind of just like in that routine, and, life's all gray, and stuff like that. So that whole kind of thing, and I did this myself. Like, I was doing a few things on the side, kind of making money and stuff like that. I enjoyed the marketing side a lot more than the job I was in. And it's like, I got to a point, and for me personally, that I always kind of had this thing where I was just like, oh, I hate it that I'm making other people money. Well, I'm in a job, I'm being paid a salary, I'm making other people money. I've come to realize, though, that isn't actually the problem, because I love making people money now. It was that case of like, you were in a box. You're capped on what you can earn. You're in a box. You're capped on what you can do. You're being told what to do and stuff like that. And I think for me, it was just a case of that freedom of choice wasn't there. It's like now, it can make all kinds of choices. Like, we jump on a podcast. Let's schedule it to that time because it's a bit hot outside. Let's enjoy the weather.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put it back to next week because I'm not feeling too great.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. It's that choice that we can do that. Whereas when you're in a job and stuff like that, you can't do that. And I think that is sometimes the big draw of kind of, why do you want to start the business? Well, I want to create something that I now have the freedom.
And I look back to the decisions I've made in the past, and that is right up there. When we talk about creating I talk about creating a values list. What are the biggest values to you? And I know that for me personally, one of my top values has always been freedom. Not freedom to travel the world, although maybe it will do. But it's not so much freedom to travel the world, but like you say, it's freedom to make your own choices and not be dictated by not to be dictated by lack of money, or as you say, being stuck in a box where you've only got to do this. Because again, like we said, realistically, money is the medium of exchange in this world. Now, that means if you haven't got it, you may not think it's important, but try living without it for, say, a month or 2 months, and you'll soon realize how important it is. So money gives us choices, but it's not just money that gives us choices. It's being in that environment where we are free to decide, I'm going to stay in bed an extra hour today. or I'm going to go out for a walk instead of sitting down here. No, do you know, I just going to chill out and then go for a walk, which you don't get when you're working for other people. And like I said, and like we've always said in the past, we're not knocking being employed because there's some people who love the jobs
Mhm.
they do, but even in the jobs where they love what they do, they haven't got the kind of freedom necessarily that they could have because they're still dictated to by the business owner or the business directors or whatever that particular business. So
I think
freedom is a
sometimes,
huge one, huge one.
yeah, I think sometimes with that also, like we said, that there's no issue with kind of being employed and stuff like that. It's all fine. But what you find a lot of the times is that people who are employed, they they get to a cap that whatever their salary is, that's their cap of living.
Yeah,
Right. So, you know, whatever it is, you like your house, car, holidays, that kind of thing, it's always relevant to whatever salary you can earn, right? And you
yeah,
usually cap then. You may get a good commission job or something like that, but you usually capped. So even if you're within there, like look, just start making moves. Like you can set stuff up on the side, you know, you can do
exactly.
all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff to make extra income to give you choice, you know, freedom of
yeah,
choice like that. That thing sometimes I think this is a problem, mate, where I think there's been a few times in my life where I've kind of gone, if I don't make the jump now, I'll never make it.
mm,
I think sometimes people do that where it's like you're never going to leave a job that is paying you X amount of salary a year, you know, even if you hate it, you know, you
yeah,
can't jump because you need that income. You're used to having that income. So if you
yeah,
start making moves now to build stuff on the side, well, you can go into that. But let's fast forward then. So I think when you know people who do make that jump and they go, right, okay, I'm going to be self-employed now, I'm going to start a business, whatever it is. I think sometimes like what happens also is that when you've been under that kind of cosh of being in work and being told what to do and everything like that, you're like, I want that freedom of choice. And then you kind of start off in business and then, you know, nothing really happens because you're just like, you know, I don't tell myself what to do.
yeah,
I can just do what I want kind of thing. And before you know it, time goes past and nothing's really happened. And that's where we kind of get sometimes involved where people have said, I've been in business for 3 years, and you kind of go, well, you haven't, have you? You know, you've just kind of repeated the same year for 3 years and not really done
yeah,
anything, got anywhere.
yeah,
We're kind of starting from scratch. And it's like, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with admitting it and going, okay, I've had an amateur business and now I want a professional business. I need to take the right steps. And there's a guy that we, you know, got in touch a little while back, kind of know him a little bit. He got in touch and he'd done a course on buying a business, and he actually bought a business. And
yeah.
you know, he's now sat there with a new business, and he's like, now what?
Now what? Mm,
I don't know anything about running a business or growing a
yeah,
business. So now what do I do? And it's
yeah,
just and it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're starting from scratch or if you've got a bigger business and stuff like that. But you need to know, you know, what you're doing and stuff like that. But more importantly, coming back to what we're talking about here is, but why are you doing it? So like,
yeah.
it's like, you know, I want to create a vehicle here that supports my family and all this kind of stuff that, you know, builds up to a point where I can acquire more businesses and leave it and go to a different country.
Yeah, and what the thing you've described there is perfect. It is really good because that's the how. You know, this guy this guy bought a business. He bought a business because his reason why is that he wants to build an income. He wants to have a freedom of choice. He wants to provide for his family. So whether you and this goes back to even being employed, you can do that by working for somebody. You can do that by being self-employed. If you're self-employed, you can do that by offering services or products. You can do that by buying companies, but and there's so many ways you can do that. But that's the how. That's always the how. So the why has to come first. Why do you want to do this? And it can be for people who are. The story I remember. I think it was Jim Rohn actually who started out. So he was working for somebody, and he was not badly paid, I think, doing job, but he was didn't have the freedom. Nothing. That was the thing that we mentioned. So he started doing some, as we call, well, as they called side hustles, but creating some kind side cash. And he got to the stage where he was earning more in his side cash business
Mm.
than he was and he said, and he thought, this is crazy. I've got to give up something. So he came out of his business because he already had this created, but he had this. But his reason why he started doing this on the side was, I've got to create, I've got to provide for my family because he was in masses of debt and he kind of lived excessively, I think, at the time. And so again, a lot of people who find themselves in debt think there's no way out. So that's a kind of an aside thing where you could create these side hustles business. But going back to what I was saying there is the how comes second. So it's why do I want to do this? What is the reason? And there are so many reasons, and there's nothing wrong with saying I want to just be able to provide more for my family and give our family more freedom of choice. That's a good enough reason for anybody. Freedom is a big thing up there. There could also be I know I can do a better job than this company I'm working for. I can produce better products. I can produce or better services. I can deliver this service they deliver, but with added extras. So again, that's the reason why you're improving people's lives. The how comes second, and I mean, we're not going to necessarily talk about the how today, but the how is okay. How do I do it? Do I, that's a kind of a different thing altogether. We always look at that first, though, is that, and it's very similar. It's interesting because I'm not saying that we preempted Simon Sinek with this idea of, start with why, but we've always been so. But do you know what? I was going out walking today, as I do, and I saw so many kids being taken to school, young kids, and I heard so many questions. Why? And it was like, we've got to do it. Why? And the kids in the push it. Why? And I just thought, never stop asking that question, because you have to answer that question. Well, why are we doing this? Why do I want to go to, why do I want to go to the beach? Why do I want to go to the mountains? Why? What's the, because it could be for self gratification and all that. But again, a reason why could be, and I've come across this with a few people that I've coached in the past, is that I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do this well.
Massively.
Perfect. What's wrong with that? That's as good a reason why as anybody's.
I think that's like you said, that whole thing of it being asking why. It's like we kind of get. I was gonna say we get beat out of that early on, not like physically beaten, but it's like we get moved out of stop asking why, and I guess we
You
go
stop asking why.
yeah, I guess we go to school and there's rules and all this kind of stuff, and it's like you're kind of then told what to do. That I think that kind of thing, like we said before, like you kind of leave school, you kind of have these dreams and stuff like that, and then you kind of leave school, you get into a job, and you're kind of in that lane, and you kind of stay in that lane, and you have to do things and stuff like that. But that whole thing of asking why, it's like you can ask why right now. It's like, why am I doing this? Why did I not get up early? Why did I watch TV, for that extra 2 hours when I knew I should have been sleeping? Why did I, why didn't I go and do, X, Y, Z when I know I should and stuff like that? And there's so many things there that you could just go, like what is that next point? What is that next? What is the next thing in my life what I'm going to ask why? And it doesn't mean sometimes that you have to ask why in, like, don't do something unless you know why. Because it's like you can still do your kind of daily stuff, and you might find out your why by doing that. It's like you said there, like some people, like they may that whole thing about your family and stuff like that. I think that's probably second after money, isn't it? It's when you ask people why do you want to do it? Oh, I want more money. Well, why is that for my family? And you break it all down. But some people, like you said, it may be that they look at their community and they're like, my community is at a disadvantage with this kind of service or product because X, Y, Z. I want to help them get whatever. It may be that you want to contribute more to a charity or to a certain kind of cause going on. It may be that you want to, in 3 years' time, take yourself off somewhere else. It could be like, I mean, this is how like crazy it is as well. Like you may be thinking a lot more kind of into the future, but you may be thinking like, do you know what? Like my parents might need some care in 10 years time or something like that. I'm going to do some stuff now to get the funds to make sure that I can, look after them, and stuff like that. It's like, it is crazy, but that once you have that kind of why, that's when you go, right, okay, whenever I'm having a down day, whenever I'm not seeing results, whenever I'm kind of struggling, I look at my why, and then it gets me back onto focus. It gets me back onto track. And that's why it's important to have the why.
Yeah, I'm absolutely right. And I think, coming back to that point that you made earlier on, wasn't it, was that revisit your why, because if you spend enough time thinking about your why, then know that the time you spent is valuable. So don't just put it away and just think, oh, I'm not going to read it again. You spent a lot of thought on it of why you're doing it. and it could be like we say, it could be just my reason why is I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this because I want to prove I can do it, or I want to provide for this order. And you do the why is to get to a decision point, which is which we'll talk about again, in a minute. And one of the things that I don't expect, for example, if you go to look at uh, was he no Sir Richard Branson, isn't it? Sir Richard Branson. Now, give the right title. I don't expect that when Sir Richard Branson started flogging records when he was at uni. He did mail order records, and that's how Virgin Records started. I don't suspect then that he thought he'd ever buy an island and live on an island.
Yeah.
But so I'm not sure. I'd love to have a conversation with him, but I don't expect that reason why was there.
Mm.
But that reason why came about because he got to the first decision point, and then he said, "Well, where do I want to go now? Why do I want to go to that place?" So Virgin Records, he sold Virgin Records, and then all that kind of stuff is right. Why do I want to take this next step to wherever it is? Why did he sell Virgin Records? Why didn't he carry on with it? And that's because he obviously made that decision point in his head, and he thought, right, I can sell this, and I can now go and do something else. And I think we can often get trapped into doing something long past its sell by date, and not realize that actually what we're doing now we've gone down this lane, and we've actually put ourselves into this lane because we didn't see that we didn't go back to that reason why enough to understand that what we were doing was maybe just a temporary vehicle or a vehicle to get to this point before we change vehicles and say, right, okay, well, I've got there, I'm really happy. Now, what do I want to do? I still want to follow my why, which is, like you said, for example, providing for my parents in case they need to go to care homes. Okay, but this maybe isn't the best thing for me now. I've done this, so I know what I've got to do. So what can I now do that's going to stick with my why and get me to go to a next level? And that could be changing a business style. It could be doing something completely different, but it fits in with your why. And it's coming back to that purpose. I mean, the BHAG, or the dumb purpose, as I call it. It's that purpose of knowing where you're going. If you have a good idea of where you'd like to get, a lot of people say, I just would love to live in the country. I'd love to have a house in the country, in a village, and maybe not in England. Maybe it's in Spain or somewhere. I don't know. But that is kind of a reason why. Right, what do I need to do to get there? And even though you might have an accountancy business that gets on, that the accountancy business, which is maybe very rooted in this country for this people, isn't going to necessarily complete your purpose of moving to Spain or whatever. But the accountancy business is, and this is how I started, the accountancy business is what you were good at, or so I thought. And you start your accountancy business, you realize that, in my case, I realized it wasn't for me. So I moved and changed, but still within the purpose of my own purpose. But it could be that you start something and you get to the level where you think, I can't go much further with this now. Where can I go next? Or how can I add to what I'm doing if I still enjoy what I'm doing? So that you're still fitting in until you get to the stage where you suddenly think, wow, I can actually do that now. I'm in a position where I can. I've reached that realization that I do have enough to actually buy a house in the country and go to Spain. And then you think, right, okay, what do I want to do next? And then again, to repeat the whole process. Why do I want to do what I want? Why do I want to do what I've decided to do next? So the whys can have what we're talking about, the whys can have a finite point, not that decision point. I've done this, that was my why. Right. What's my purpose now? What do I want to do now? Maybe it's to travel the world, or I don't know, travel around Europe, or in some cases, people in their 40s, 40s and 50s getting married because they've never been married before. They decided that they love their partner that much, they want to get married. And the reason for getting married is because, I suppose, it's socially acceptable, maybe, but it may be for other reasons than that. But again, it's that people have decision points where the why can then become something else,
And it's so interesting, isn't it? Like that what you were talking about, like with Branson, for example, was that he could have started off, and I don't even think the records were like the first thing. I think it was like a student magazine or something
Oh,
like
it
that.
could, yeah, it was. Sorry,
Yeah.
it was a student
And
magazine. Yeah,
but I think it was like the records is what made the kind of money. But like with that is that he could have started out in a way where he's like you said it. Oh, I just want to prove those wrong. I just want to
yeah, yeah,
I want to prove my parents wrong, or I want to prove my
yeah,
employers wrong, or something like that. The people around me, I want to prove them wrong and do this. Or I know I'm destined for more. I know I can do this. I'm going to start doing it. Like so, you reach that point, and then it's like, actually, I want more.
yeah,
Yeah? And then it's like, okay, what is that next step? What is it I want to get to, and stuff like that. And that is what we talk about with building momentum, and kind of going through the kind of stages and stuff. But it is like crazy. Like sometimes that kind of why, and we talk about kind of making money, freedom, and all this kind of stuff. Equally, having that villain, that you're fighting against can be the same thing. Can be your kind of, your kind of go. It's like remember hearing remember hearing Mike Tyson talking, doing this kind of interview when he was back being like world champion. And then someone said, "Oh, you get up at 4 o'clock to go running, don't you?" And he's like, "I'm already running at 4 o'clock." He said, "I'm out there." He said, "Because I know the people that I'm fighting, they're not doing that." He said, "If I heard that they were
yeah,
out running at 3, I'll be running at 2." And it's like he always had that thing of the other person, I'm gonna outwork them, I'm gonna do more than them. So having that kind of villain can equally be as important.
yeah,
So if you're kind of not finding that why and stuff like that, of that kind of that kind of North Star, it's the opposite. Then it's fighting against who you, or even who you don't want to be. Maybe you see
yeah.
something, I don't want to end up like that, so I'm going down this route.
That's the whole thing there on motivation. And in motivation, there's two types of motivation. One which is stronger than the other. So the real strong motivation is to get away from something. So,
Mm,
for example, you want to leave your job for whatever reason, and you just want to, or you want to prove people wrong. So at school, they told you, "Oh, you'll never come to anything." So you think, "I'm going to get away from that perception, and I'm going to prove them wrong." And that's a really strong motivation, but it can be short-lived because once you prove them wrong, the motivation dies. So there's two types. So that's the first one, away from that kind of motivation, away from something that gave you pain or whatever. And then it's a forward to. So it's getting towards. So for example, right now I want my house in the country and I want this because I now know I can do this. So I've basically put two fingers up to society, say, yeah, I can do it. But now I want to move towards this. And so that motivation is weaker, but lasts much, much, much longer. And that's the whole point. And then, and in between the two, if you come to from and away from motivation and you've made what you consider that, okay, I can now do, I've, as I say, I've got to where I want to go and I proved everyone wrong. That's a decision point. Right. What now? I've done that. I know I can do it. I can do it again, maybe just to prove people doubly wrong. I can set up something else. But what I would really love is this. So then the reason why changes from just being, I'm going to prove them wrong, to now the house in the country, or
mm.
moving to another country, or whatever.
It was really interesting. Like you say about those kind of changes. If you look at most businesses, most big brands, they never started out doing what they do now.
No,
Or it's
no.
changed over time. Now, probably one that you would say, okay, look, this is they've stayed the same. We spoke about in the last episode about McDonald's.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You kind of think, okay, yeah, it's burgers and fries, right? But if you think about it, the ingredients have probably changed over that time.
mm,
The models changed over that time. And when you break it all down as well, like if you really get into the whole kind of McDonald's things, they say they're not in the fast food business now; they're in the property
property
business, right?
business. Yeah,
And
real
stuff
estate.
like that. But you take lots of different companies, and there's a picture that went around on social media recently, and it's got the big pen, and the big pen like hasn't changed over the years. It's always the same big pen, and they're just like, oh,
Yeah,
you stick with something. Like once you have something, and it's like, look, the pen is obviously of a certain quality that it's cheap enough and it lasts and it's good. But if you look at Bic as a company, it's like, well, when they came out with the pen and all this kind of stuff, which actually bought a patent for it, to actually manufacture it. Well, once they made some money, they got into the kind of disposable razor business. They got
Yeah.
into the lighter kind of business,
Yeah. Yeah.
lighters, and it's actually like the lighters make more money for them today than like the pens.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like if they just stayed on the pen, if they didn't look at innovation, they didn't look to grow, or they didn't look at that next kind of decision point, they would always be capped at that pen, and they're probably out of business because the pen wouldn't give them
Yeah.
enough money to sustain everything. So it's like that kind of thing that bringing it on then, mate. Like before, not to kind of wrap things up, but I think if we get on to that kind of decision point, and then we'll look at that, and then maybe we'll go over the decision point stuff a bit more in another episode. But that
Mm.
there will get into your next decision point. That there is so important where you can go, right, okay, look, in 6 months' time, like this is what I want to achieve. This is where I want to be. We kind of set that goal. For us, we kind of look at it going, right, 6 years, right, let's bring it back down to 6 months. But breaking it down so we kind of know that kind of stage. So once we look at the next 6 months, we kind of go, right, okay, what is it we're really trying to achieve? Why do we want that?
Yeah.
So we can then do something. So when we get to that 6 point decision mark, we can go, have we reached it?
Yeah.
Are we ready now to move on to the next stage, or has something changed?
Yeah. And that comes down to defining when you've arrived, isn't it? So, yeah, I know we talk an awful lot about start with the end in mind. And the end in mind doesn't necessarily mean, I know we talk uh, business exit and all the rest of it. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go that far. Someone starting out the first time is probably not even going to think about selling their business in 10 years' time, for example, because that's miles away. They can't think that. But start with the end in mind is there's, okay, I want to prove people wrong. Like that, for example, take that motivation. Um, I want to set this up and prove people I can do it, show people I can do it, and I can make a business of it. And so the decision was, okay, so starting with the end in mind, by when would you think you'd like to do it? Well, I want to be able to have something that I can really show people within, I don't know, a year and a half, for example. So now that's their decision point. That, I mean, there's obviously lots of different points going back to that, but their big decision point in a year and a half, their purpose, if you like, is that I want a business that is sustainable, it's producing a certain amount of income, it's providing for me, and I'm proved to myself that I can do this. That's perfect. That's nothing wrong with that at all. And then, like you said, we move back. So, okay, where would you want to be in? So, 3 months. Okay, let's go like 3 months, maybe 6 months. Where do you need to be? So, are we on the momentum builder? We work on 6 months. So it's okay. In 6 months' time, then we want to be so far down the road. So for a year and a half, you want all this. Let's go back. So what about in a year? Where do you want to be in a year? And then let's go back again. And then 6 months. Okay, we know in 6 months these are our targets, and that's the decision time. That's a kind of a sub decision time, because in 6 months you look, am I on track? Or if I am on track, great. How can I accelerate? Or if I'm not on track, what do I need to do? Course correction, that kind of thing. What do I need to do extra now to bring that, bring myself back on track. But the point is that 6 months is a decision point, and you'll have, if you do the 6 months, you've got 3 decision points for the year and a half, and you say, right, done it. I've got there. And this is again the same point is part of that. The decision point is is that clarity of, okay, I've got my reason why. What do I want to do? What's the year and a half thing of having that business? Then moving backwards. Okay, in 6 months, where do I want to be in defining that? And that's something that we do a lot, isn't it? So you want to get to the stage where there's decision point, and maybe we think it's 6 months, and it may be 4 months, or it may be 7 months, or whatever. I don't know. But the point is, you've got a decision point which you think is going to be around this time scale, but it's flexible because it's not about the time. It's not about, oh, you haven't been in business 6 months yet. You can't make a decision yet. It's about defining where that decision point is, how it appears to you, everything about it. And time, I won't say is irrelevant, but time doesn't matter. If you get there early, great, brilliant, because it means that now you can move on and perhaps you're going to have a bigger business. But it's clarifying and really understanding that is where you can make that decision, what that decision point looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that whole kind of thing as well, like that destination of that 6 months. Well, yeah, that journey, it may speed up. Anything could happen.
Yeah,
You may land a massive contract and it accelerates the plans.
yeah,
It could be that you tested something and actually there's a problem with it. So,
yeah,
now you need to kind of reevaluate. You don't want to wait 6 months with dealing with a problem, to then go, right, okay. But it's also important then to look at going that, is this just something that's shiny? Is it shiny object syndrome where I'm just like,
yeah,
this looks really good over here. Let's move it. Like we talked about it before, where we say, someone could be making, they could be getting leads and doing great business by using LinkedIn or something like that. But here comes TikTok, the next latest thing. Let's go and spend a lot of time on TikTok. Well, if you leave LinkedIn, you're not going to get the business from it anymore.
yeah,
You still need to be doing that stuff on LinkedIn and maybe test the stuff over on TikTok to see if it overtakes it. In 6 months' time, you can make that decision, or when it makes sense to make that decision. But if you just jump at it, shiny object syndrome, you
yeah,
lose then that whole kind of business. And what's really interesting there is like the 6 months it is attainable for most people. Like when they kind of look at it and go, okay, 6 months it isn't a great deal of time. I can focus on this. I can do it. And if for any reason you're just like, oh, nothing could be done in 6 months' time, look at your previous 6 months,
mm,
and that is equal to where you are now. The decisions that you've made, the effort you've put in, and stuff like that. Like
yeah,
if you
exactly
started
right.
out in
Yeah,
business and you've kind of half-assed it, and not really done anything too serious, maybe you made a few videos or you've done a few posts or something, but you haven't really gone after anything, and you have no business now. Well, that's why. Right? It's like you didn't really go after it. Your purpose isn't there. That why isn't there. Your motivation isn't there. You really need to go after it. I said in the podcast we did last time, like if you know that your offer can change someone's life, you'll be shouting about it from the rooftops.
yeah,
If you're there, you're not too sure about it or something like that. You kind of just sit back and kind of wait for people to come to you when they never do. So that kind of part there is that your past 6 months is where you are now, and if you are already in business, maybe you have a good business or something like that, and you kind of look at it going, the last 6 months were horrible because I was just firefighting issues and all this kind of stuff. Is like, well, look, you didn't have the right plan in place, right? You just always firefighting stuff. You're not looking at the growth. You're not looking at where you want to be, where you want to be going. And if you look at something in your life as well, you think about it being, we always come back to kind of fitness and health and stuff like that. If a bodybuilder who has a competition coming up in 6 months' time, they start with the right kind of nutrition, the right training,
yeah,
all
yeah,
that stuff to
yeah,
get to that
yeah,
peak. Whereas if you just kind of ate junk food and stuff like that and didn't work out for 6 months, you're gonna feel that. You're gonna start looking a bit out of shape and a bit. You're gonna lack energy and stuff. So looking at it from that kind of bodybuilder point of view, that's what we want to do. We want to look at the next 6 months and go, right, okay, our competition time is in 6 months' time. This is the peak performance we want to be in, the shape we want to be in. We now have to take the steps to get there. We can't just, eat a load of junk food all week and then do 2 hours of training and think that we'll be okay.
yeah, exactly
We have
right.
to start
Yeah,
with from now, in
yeah,
6 months' time, this is where I want to be and this is what I have to do.
yeah, exactly. No, that's right. And I think that's the whole point of the strategy plan, isn't it? Is that it is in in that whole strategic planning thing is okay. We've asked the question why. What does success look like for you? And if like you said, if it's a bodybuilder at 6 months, I want to be into Mr. Universe competition, and I want to be in the top three, for example, and top five or whatever. Right. Okay. So let's go for it. And you start today. You don't start. Okay. Well, I'm a bit busy. Let's start next month. It just doesn't happen. But that will happen if the why is not strong enough. And this is the whole point about it. If your why isn't strong enough, you'll prevaricate. You won't get things done. Going back, to Mike Tyson, for example. Mike Tyson wanted to be the champion of the world, right? What he wanted to be world champion. He wanted to beat everybody. So his why was strong enough that he would get up an hour earlier than people go running, even this in the snow and the rain and the sleet and the kind of morning when you wake up and you think, oh, I don't want to go out there. He did it because he would have had the same feelings. Just because it's Iron Tyson, he would have had the same feelings as you and me. You look out of bed and you think, oh no, I'm not going out there. He would have had the same. But he looked at his wife and thought, no, I'm going out there because I want to be world champion. and I will be world champion. Not that I want to be, I will be world champion, because it was that strong in his head. So he did. So he went out, and I'm sure he hated every minute of it. In some days, and other days he thought it was great because of, don't say the sun was shining that time in the morning, but it was peaceful and it was dry. But it doesn't matter whether there are days that you wake up and you're going to hate going out or you're going to love going out. The fact is, you're going out. That's because your why is that strong. And we found, and don't get me wrong, I've been there as well. I find that if your why is not strong enough, you will, the alarm will go and you look out and you think, oh, let's go back to sleep. Or, no, I'm not going out there.
Just you let yourself off, don't you? I think that's something we
you let yourself off. Yeah,
we haven't crossed it on this podcast. We talked about the kind of, but more about the kind of freedom style and the motivation, stuff like that. But really, when you have your why, it gives you the discipline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you said that thing of, that I don't feel like it today. You need that discipline to be like, just do it. So when you do it on the bad days and you do it on the good days and all this kind of stuff, that consistency is what gets you to that next decision point where you go, okay, I've made it to this point now. Now I want to look at, what else.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good point to kind of stop on and look to sum that up of, look, your why is what gets you going and gives you that kind of thing to aim for. And then your next decision point kind of gives you your plan then. It kind of breaks down, okay, but this is what we need to achieve within this point to kind of get to it. And that is just the kind of first part within strategic planning and scope. Like, this is what we do within Momentum Builder. The whole kind of point is that it's strategic thinking. You're thinking in a different way. Okay, look, what does that need to do? You then have the plan to kind of follow, and you have that kind of accountability then, with yourself and others and stuff like that to look at, okay, these are my aspirations, this is how I, get to my achievements. And, how can we make it even better? How can we speed up that journey? How can we make it bigger? How can we get to that end goal, that why, rather than later? So,
absolutely. Yeah.
That's my kind of summing up. I was about to say, how do you want to sum it up? But yeah.
I think that's pretty good. And I just think that, it's just the importance of why is just, you can't overestimate the importance of why. As I said, Simon Sinek wrote a book about it, and just take the guide from your little youngsters who keep asking their mums and dads why, because always ask yourself, why am I doing this? Because if you get it and get it really, really strong, get that reason why really strong, then you can become invincible.
And that's exactly, isn't it? The invincible is like, it's that self-discipline.
Yeah.
It's that thing. I can remember hearing something, I think it was Tony Robbins or something like that, and he said he was really overweight. And then he got to a point where he was eating and he was full. And he was like, why am I still eating if I'm full?
Yeah.
I need that discipline within myself to push the plate away. And it's that kind of thing. It's just like, look, why, have I done the work that needs to be done? If not, why am I clocking off? Why am I going?
Yeah, exactly.
And that kind of thing, set out and do what you need to do. And don't get me wrong, look, rest is important, all this kind of stuff. But, it's having that discipline in yourself to go, look, I'm going to do what needs to be done, whether the sun's shining, whether it's snowing, I'm going to do what needs to be done. So that there, first couple of points of strategic planning. In the next episode, we'll get into the other points, and we'll give you more of an overview of, look, creating that kind of professional business and, achieving the success that you want. So, Mark, it's always been a pleasure.
Indeed it has.
Catch you next time.
Thanks for listening, everyone.